Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about two little words that set off a massive global reckoning. Me Too. For so many of us, it felt like it just exploded out of nowhere. But the real story? Well, it's a lot deeper and way more complex than you might think. All right, let's get into it.
So, the part of the story most of us remember kicks off right here, in October of 2017. Suddenly, bombshell allegations of sexual abuse against the incredibly powerful film producer Harvey Weinstein are all over the news. And that created a shockwave that was just about to circle the entire globe.
And then came this tweet from the actress Alyssa Milano. I mean, it's such a simple request, right? But it was like she turned a key in a lock that had been rusted shut for decades. It just unlocked this absolute floodgate of shared experiences. And within hours, the hashtag #MeToo was, well, it was everywhere. It was this viral tidal wave, a testament to a problem that had been hiding in plain sight for far too long. That hashtag took something that felt deeply personal and lonely and blasted it onto the global stage. It wove all of these isolated experiences together into one massive collective voice. But here's the thing. Was this tweet really the start of it all? Not even close. The real answer might actually surprise you. To find the true origin, we have to go back more than a decade before that hashtag ever started trending.
You see, the phrase Me Too wasn't born on social media. It was actually created with a totally different purpose in mind by an activist who was doing the hard work on the ground long before Hollywood ever paid attention.
The story really has two totally different chapters. The phrase itself, Me Too, was first used way back in 2006 by an activist named Tarana Burke. That's a full 11 years before it blew up as a viral hashtag. So what was it originally for? Tarana Burke's whole vision for Me Too was completely rooted in empathy. It was meant to be this quiet, powerful whisper between survivors, basically a way of saying, hey, I see you. You are not alone in this. The entire goal was to build connection and start the healing process, especially for young women of color in communities that were often completely overlooked.
So you have this huge contrast, right? What started in 2006 as this intimate, grassroots tool for healing completely transformed in 2017 into a massive public megaphone. It became a call for disclosure, a demand for accountability, both incredibly powerful for sure, but they came from fundamentally different places.
Okay, so that begs the question, why then? Why did this hashtag resonate so powerfully in 2017? What was simmering just under the surface that allowed two simple words to ignite a global firestorm? Let's break down the core issues that the movement really dragged into the light. First, it just ripped the lid off the sheer scale of the problem. Hashtag #MeToo showed the world that sexual harassment wasn't just a case of a few bad apples. No, it's a systemic problem, something that's baked into the very structure of our institutions. It also put a huge spotlight on power dynamics and how positions of authority, whether it's based on gender, race, or your job title, are so often exploited.
And this is so crucial. The movement went head-to-head with the culture of silence. It directly challenged the fear of not being believed, the fear of losing your job, the fear of being shamed, all of these things that kept so many people quiet for so long. And in doing that, it tackled the issue of impunity head-on, this idea that perpetrators, especially powerful ones, could act without ever facing consequences.
As millions of people joined this conversation, the movement started to evolve way beyond just social media. It grew into this multi-front push for real change, with people taking a stand in all sorts of powerful ways.
You could almost see it building over time. What started with hashtags quickly spilled out into the streets with huge marches and protests. From there, it pushed for real legal action and advocacy. It inspired art, music, and film. And finally, it led to tangible reforms in the workplace, everything from brand new policies to mandatory training. Now, as you can imagine, like any massive societal shift that challenges norms that have been around forever, the Me Too movement hasn't been without its debates. Alongside all the praise, it's also sparked some really complex and important conversations about its methods and its consequences.
And understanding these nuances is really key. So, on one hand, the movement is praised for empowering survivors. But on the other, concerns were raised about the risk of false accusations. The huge push for public accountability sparked some tough debates about due process and the court of public opinion. And as workplace norms were redefined, it led to questions about how it would impact everyday interactions between men and women.
And finally, there's the critical issue of intersectionality. Some critics argue that the mainstream movement didn't always center the unique experiences of women of color and other marginalized groups, the very communities you'll remember that Tarana Burke first wanted to serve.
So after all that, where does it leave us? Well, the conversations that Me Too started are still very much ongoing. They're complicated and they are far from over. But one thing is for sure, its legacy is already undeniable.
If there's one core takeaway from all of this, it's this. The movement fundamentally changed the global conversation. Period. It empowered countless survivors to finally share their truths, and it absolutely shattered that culture of silence that had protected perpetrators for generations. We are now, as a world, having a discussion that was simply impossible before.
And all of that leaves us with a really critical question for the future. This powerful, necessary drive for accountability is here to stay. But how do we, as a society, balance that drive with the foundational principles of fairness and due process for everyone involved? That, right there, is the complex challenge the Me Too movement leaves all of us to navigate.